All right, welcome back everybody. Here we are starting out in our imposition file because when we want to use stack boxes, this is where it is all going to begin. The reason for that is that each of these rows defined within our signatures section of the imposition, I shouldn't say rows actually, but each of these signatures defined within this section needs to include an attribute called stackboxname. If this stackboxname attribute does not exist, you cannot use stackbox signatures within the layouts of your batch impositions. So the attribute, as I mentioned, is just stackboxname, and then you have to give each one a unique name. Now in this case, since we're dealing with simplex output, just we don't have double-sided things to worry about here, I'm just using stack1 and stack2. Now remember that our imposition is 2 rows, a single column. Now in this case, we start at the bottom with our columns and row designations over here. So the bottom signature of the 2-up imposition is going to have the name stack1. The top signature of our 2-up imposition is going to have the name stack2. Now if we had an imposition that was duplex, you would see signatures and stackbox names that were in the form of stack1 front for the front side, and then you would do stack1 back as an example. But again, we're just working with a simplex job here, so we just have stack1 and stack2. And again, these names can be anything that you want. It's just the name that you need to refer to when you're wanting to lay the stamps down within the layout file. So with that said, we're going to move over to our batch layout that is being called by this imposition, which I happen to have open right up here. Now if you don't have it open, remember you can always go back to Config Browser, expand things out to the batch, expand out the batch, and when you get to that layout, just right click on it and then open with Notepad++. So here we have our layout, and you will notice that I've already added in several stamps. And we're going to go through these one at a time and just talk through them. I would encourage you to periodically pause the video and add each of these stamps into your layout as well, so that you can work with this stuff in your environment and get some practice on using these different stamps within the batch layout. So the first one here, the format string, remember, is just the text that we want to display. And for this first stamp, I'm just putting some text down to call out that this is stackbox1. And then all these other attributes we've seen, we're using font Arial, font size 12. We're making it relative for the positioning. Now here's the key right here. In this case, and for all of these, you'll see the box is going to be relative to stack1. So we're just working with stamps that are going to be relative to that bottom signature in the 2-up imposition. Now the X and Y position basically just says start it in the lower left corner, about 18 points in, and we're going down 18 points, which may not make sense just yet unless you can visualize this in your head really well, but if not, don't worry about it. You'll see it in practice here in just a little bit. Now the next stamp, again, is relative to the stack box, that stack1, and we need that to be relative to stack1 because in this case, we're starting to use some of those stamps that are signature level stamps. And again, the only way those work is if they are relative to a stack box, which these are. So we're going to put a stamp down called page and pages. And I just threw some text in here so it's a little bit more readable when we see it in the created batched output. So we should see something that shows page 1 of 10 or page 2 of 10, something like that. The next stamp again is a signature stamp, but it allows you to use one stamp that essentially does exactly what these 2 stamps do. So we have a single stamp called page N of M, which is going to put the 1 of 2 or 1 of 10 in that format. Then as we continue to go down here, we have another signature stamp for copy and copies. So again, we're relative to the stack box, and then all these other attributes you've seen throughout this whole video series. And then this is the last of our signature stamps that we're going to look at, which is an item and items stamp. And again, we'll see those in the output here in just a moment. These last set of stamps I put to demonstrate a few things. So you'll see that the stamps we're using are spread N and spread of M. We have the same stamps here. And then the last one is the sheet stamps to show what sheet of how many sheets that we're on. Now, one of the other things that I'll point out here is even though this spread N and spread of M are not signature stamps, they're batch level stamps, you can still stamp it relative to a stack box, because a lot of times stamping relative to a stack box makes it a lot easier to position things than having to rely on one of the media or bleed or trim boxes, which is going to be the size of that entire spread that we have all these signatures on. So this was just to highlight that whether it's a batch level stamp, or even when it's a batch level stamp, I should say, you can position those stamps relative to any of the boxes. Now, when it comes to the signature level stamps though, those absolutely have to be stamped relative to a stack box. There's just no way around that. So here we have all of our stamps defined, and again, if you need to, go ahead and pause the video, and I'll kind of scroll through these here so that you can capture each one of them. And then when you're ready, we'll go ahead and go to the next three. So here's our next set of stamps. Go ahead and pause the video at this point, and then resume when you're ready to see the next stamps. And then here's our last set of stamps. You can pause the video and add these into your layout as you need. All right, so let's go ahead, come back over to the UI, and we're going to go ahead and create a batch now that we have all of these stamps added to our batch layout. We'll wait for our batch to get all the way through its processing here. And we should have all of these stamps showing up below the signature that is in that stack 1 position. So here our batch is almost finished. Once we get the final light on that, we will head over to the Press Jobs tab. And then after this next refresh, there's our press job. So let's take a look at this and see what we have. First, let's make this a little smaller. Now this is, remember, stack 2 up here on top. So we want to come down and see what is below stack 1. All right, so let's take a look at this real quick. So starting over here at the left, we have that just straight text stamp that I put in to label this one as stack box 1, which this is. Next we see the stamp page 1 of 10, and this is where we typed in the word page and then used the %page, the word of, and then %pages. So that gave us this page 1 of 10. Now the next one is still showing the pages 1 of 10, but it was just done in a single stamp where we have that page N of M stamp that we can put down. Now, a couple things to note here. I just want to call this out as we go through this. These stamps are only applicable to this signature with this yellow fish. Now, this is telling you the page number of this book that we're looking at. Same with this here, it's showing you the page number. Now, if we scroll down and we look at the first signature on this next spread, we can see this is page 2 of 10. Still, we have 2 of 10 over here. Now, when we come back up here, our next stamps we have are copy and item. Now, most of the time, you're going to see the values of these be the same, because essentially, like in this case, we have a single item in our batch. It's this one book. We have 10 copies of that book. So here we're going to see copy 1 of 10, and here we're going to see item 1 of 10. So most of the time they're going to match. Now these can change depending upon the structure of your order, whether there's more than one line item that make up the order, how many items we have in the batch. So you're gonna see these change, so just be aware of that. And as we come down, we can start seeing those values change as well. Now here, we're still only on 1 of 10 for the copy and the item, because we're still only on page 2 of the first book. But if we come up here to pages, and let's say we go to 40, now we'll come down to that first signature, or stack 1 I should say. Now we're down on the 10th book. and we're on the 10th page for this book. Or I'm sorry, we're on the 4th copy of 10 and the 4th item of 10. So just shows the way that these stamps are applicable to the signature that you're looking at, not to the batch as a whole. Now, if we come back up to page 1 and we look at these batch level stamps, a couple things to note here is we can see that we're on spread 1 of 50. So there are 50 pages of PDF output, or 50 spreads, and we can see that also right up here at the top of Acrobat Reader. We see 50. Now, when it comes to the number of sheets, we only have 25 sheets because there are always 2 spreads to 1 sheet. Now, that's kind of a misnomer here because, you know, we've called this out as a simplex product, but as a PDF goes, you know, every piece of paper, every page is going to have 2 sides. So if we're talking sheets where there's 2 spreads, we're looking at 25 sheets. And then this is just the same stamp down here, but the difference between this spread 1 of spread 50 versus the one at the top here where it says spread 1 of spread 50 is this top one we stamped relative to the stack box, and this bottom one we stamped relative to the media box. And I did that just to show you that when it comes to batch level stamps, you can stamp them relative to any box that you want. Now, the next thing that we want to do, so we can kind of see this working for all of the different stack boxes within the output, is we're going to put this relative to stack box 2 that we created. And that essentially is going to be right here in this white space between the 2 signatures. Now, just given how much space this takes up, I can see pretty easily that it's not going to fit here very well. Now we can fix that really quick by simply going into our imposition. Let's see if we have that open. So here's our imposition. Now remember, in there we created margins all the way around that were 72 points. But when it comes to the gutter up here that we created between the signatures, we only made it a ½ inch, or 36 points. So we're going to go ahead and change that to 72. We'll save it. And then here's the cool thing about working with stack boxes. When it comes to creating the stamps for all of your different stack boxes that may be in your imposition, you don't need to change any of the positioning. You just need to change the name of the stack box that you're referencing. So we can take all of these, and first what I'm going to do, just to kind of keep things straight, is I'm going to make a little comment up here saying stack 1 boxes. I'll just put stack 1. And then we'll end that comment. And what I'm going to do is copy all of these. So we'll come down here, copy this. I'm going to make one more comment called stack 2, just so we know what we're working with, and we'll paste all these in. Now everything below stack 2, we're going to change what box these stamps are relative to. So we're basically just going to change all of these to say stack 2 instead of stack 1. So I would encourage you to paste these in your system, change all of these to stack 2 in your system as well, and then once we get done changing all of these, we'll save it, reprocess things. Actually, we don't need to reprocess, we'll just create a new batch, and the output should be consistent between what we have listed below stack 1 and what we have listed below stack 2, the 2 signatures. Now, here's something that we don't need to duplicate. Because these last sets of stamps that we have here are relative to the media box, we only need to do that one time, because that's for the whole spread that we're dealing with, not the individual signatures. So we're going to get rid of these last 2 in our second set. And that should give us the output we're after. So let's see how we did here. We'll save that. Come back to the UI. We will go ahead and create another batch. Wait for this one to process through. And if all goes well, like I said, we should end up with all of those same stamps that we saw at the bottom of signature 1 should be at the bottom of signature 2, and in addition to that, we should also have more space between the two signatures so that all of this stuff will fit. And we did that by adjusting that gutter within the imposition. So let's go ahead and view this. Here's our first signature. We have more space, and we have our stamp. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, we don't have those second two stamps. That's true, we don't, because they weren't relative to the stack box. They were relative to the media box, and the media box is this entire spread that we're looking at, and that's why we only needed it a single time. So if we shrink this down, we can see that these two stamps down here will show up on every spread, but in this signature 2 position, we're only going to get the one that was relative to the signature. So let's take a look at these real quick. Here we can see stack box 1. Because this is a static text that I just typed in, that's an error on my part. I should have actually labeled that stack box 2, not 1. So that's just a typo right there. So here we still have page 1 of 10, because it is the first page of the book, the yellow fish. Still, same thing over here, 1 of 10 for the page. Now look at copies though. Now we're looking at the 6th copy of the book and the 6th item within the batch. And if we come down here, we can see that in this first position, we're looking at 1 of 10. So there's a quick demonstration on using stack boxes and the types of signatures that you can apply that are specific to stack boxes. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover in this video, and we will go ahead and end this one here, and I will see you in the next video.